Hello, friends, and welcome to a Hasty podcast. I'm your fresh face, Weston Hasty, and you're listening to a Hasty podcast. If you think that I said that twice, it's because I did. Welcome to the new year, friends, and good morning / good evening. I'm not entirely sure when you might be seeing this. Of course, I am uploading this in the morning, so ideally you're seeing this in the morning, but perhaps it's another time zone for you. It could be any time. However, I'm going to continue the age-old tradition. By age-old, I mean relatively recent, as of late last year, tradition of saying good morning, friends. Hello and welcome to a Hasty podcast. I hope I'm not coming in too hot and furious for you. This is a new year! I'm very excited to say it's a new year. It's a new everything. In fact, this is a very different year for a Hasty podcast. Late last year, I need to introduce you guys to the podcast again because it's been several weeks. I need to reintroduce you to the history of the podcast, but don't worry. Coming up later in this episode, we will be talking about things that are not just this podcast. I should say that first and foremost, because I spent a lot of time talking about starting a podcast, but not a lot of time talking about anything else. Later in the podcast, we will be talking about Christmas, because that has happened. The new year, because that has happened, as well as goals, milestones, etc. that I plan on seeing in the future, as well as the death of Flash. And we will be talking about Cyberpunk, all coming up later in this episode. If that seems like a lot of topics, it's because it is. It's a new year. Holy cow. I've got so much stuff to tell you. Late last year, I began a podcast called a Hasty Podcast. Thus named because that is my name. It's not a super original name, all right? It's not fancy. My name is Weston Hasty. And I love the fact that I can do a number of different puns, or they're not even puns, but I can do a lot with the name Hasty, right? I can do a lot with that. And this podcast, much to the name that I live up to, it was hastily thrown together out of a stroke of sheer mad inspiration to do a solo podcast, discussing video games, Netflix shows I'm watching, my life, whatever might come to mind. Doing that in a podcast form for people to watch, or not watch, but to listen to and enjoy. The plan was simple. I came up with this last year. The plan was simple. Daily podcast. Every single day, I would do a recording for the podcast in the morning, about a 30-minute podcast, and the following day, that episode would release. And I would do that every day. The idea was that it would be a way of forcing me to wake up early in the morning and get my day started at a relatively good time, instead of me sleeping in until the very last possible second before I had to start the day. This was a way of me getting out and up and moving ahead of the curve, basically. That was the plan, right? This was the plan. I'm going to make my life better by getting out of bed and getting my day started, and I'm going to actually produce some kind of content, some kind of something that I can be proud of later down the line. Something. I like making things. If I'm not making something, I feel like I'm wasting my time, and I do waste my time a lot, but I always end up feeling bad about it later. That was the plan. The plan has thus far, failed miserably. I did a very good job of hanging on to that plan early, and then as time went on, it waned, and eventually I crashed and burned, and it was no longer to keep up with that hectic schedule. It just doesn't fit my personality, apparently. So, as we neared the end of the year, my goals and objectives and my ideas began to shift in ways that I was not sure what the final product would turn out to be. This last month of me not podcasting was not intended. I did the last episode I did in 2020 was to explain what my plans were for the rest of December and then what I was going to be doing in the new year. None of that happened. And now it is 2021. There is something that you may have noticed as the number one biggest change to the podcast format this year is that now the show is an hour-ish long. It is twice the length of the daily podcast that I originally planned on doing. However, that comes with other changes as well. What I realized doing the half-hour podcasts is that I felt very rushed to discuss my topics that I had in mind, which, fun enough, is pretty appropriate to a Hasty podcast. Hasty meaning fast, rushed, rush podcast. felt very appropriate. However, much against my own name, I found that entire experience to be, I don't want to say stressful, but I do want to say that I felt like that I could not fully elaborate on my thoughts in that time frame. The things that I wanted to get said, I felt like I could not go into detail and depth in that amount of time. So what I did to try to combat that last year was that I tried to reduce the number of topics I would cover. I went from trying to cover 2 topics in a podcast to 1 and spend the entire podcast going as in-depth and in detail about each topic as possible. That led to a different array of problems wherein sometimes I didn't have that much depth to add to a specific topic. It was a different range of problems. This has been an experimental experiment is what I was going to say, but I feel like that's a little redundant. It's been an experimental project for me trying to run a podcast. So here's the new iteration of a Hasty podcast, a 1-hour show done once weekly. That's right. This may change slightly over time. I wonder, and this is going to feed into my sort of milestones and resolutions and goals and stuff for the coming year a little bit, but I do suspect perhaps that as the year goes on, I might try to turn this into a bi-weekly, and by that I mean twice a week, or ish, something like that, podcast, still at an hour long, or down the road, if I feel like once a week is a good amount of, a good number of days, I'm hoping maybe down the line we can turn this into a 2-hour podcast, if I can prove to be interesting for that length of time, and if it is possible to bring on, as I hope to do later in the year, guests into the show. I don't have any immediately lined up that I can speak of at this time, but it's possible that I will be able to bring on guests down the road, and that will be conducive of a longer show. So here's the thing. Welcome to a Hasty podcast, new and I hope to be improved podcast. I should say this before we get too much further into the show, that there is another big change to the podcast that those of you watching on YouTube have noticed for the last few minutes, but I haven't explained yet to my listeners. I am now putting this podcast on YouTube, not just in an audio form, but in a video form as well. So you can go to YouTube. I have a link down in the description of this podcast that you can follow to go to the podcast. The title, the channel name on YouTube should be A Hasty Podcast, although at the time of immediately recording this, it might just be Hasty Podcast. Regardless, follow the link down in the description or try to YouTube search A Hasty Podcast, and it should come up. This is new and developing as I speak, and it has a video element to it. It's a little bare bones right now. It's a little bare. Everyone watching on YouTube right now can just see that I'm sitting in front of partially a green screen and partially a work corner that I do very little with, that has one of my old laptops sitting on it. It's not a lot to look at right now. It's very bare, and there's not going to be a lot to see, other than if you're particularly interested in seeing my facial expressions as I talk. If you've ever wanted to see what's it look like behind the veil that is the podcasting, I don't know, what would you call it if you're listening to this on like Spotify, the veil of mystery, right? You know, you wouldn't know what necessarily the podcaster looks like, or what they look like when they're talking, or what their setup looks like, that kind of thing. And now, if you're keenly interested in doing so, I have a YouTube channel for that. You can watch me on YouTube, but you can continue listening to me on all of the audio platforms that I was available at before, including Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public, I think is what it's called. I always forget that one. But all my links are available down below, as well as on my Anchor page at anchor.fm/Hasty Podcast. Links down below, of course, in the description of the podcast. But that's a big move. And why? Why have I decided to but include a video element in a YouTube based video version of the podcast? Why have I decided to do that? And it's because I spent a tremendous amount of time on YouTube. This is the part where I need to reintroduce myself. I'm Weston Hasty. I spent a lot of time on YouTube, all right? My major mainstay number one project that I work on that I've spent years developing, rather unsuccessfully, depending on your definition of success. I don't roll in money. It doesn't make me a great deal of money. I don't have millions of subscribers or whatever you might define typical YouTuber success as, right? I'm not the PewDiePies of the world. I'm certainly not the Paul brothers of the world. I don't know any big YouTubing podcast hosts, really, particularly, but to compare myself to, which you shouldn't compare myself to because I'm not any of those things. My major number one project on YouTube is a gaming channel by name of Magic Man Mo. And it's a gaming Let's Play channel. For those of you that are interested in gameplays and that kind of thing, you can check it out. If you're not interested, don't worry. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. But the point is, I've spent many, many, many years on YouTube trying to hone my YouTubing craft and my video making craft and that sort of thing. And I feel very at home on YouTube. And as I've been developing this podcast, this audio form of podcast, while I'm very keenly interested and wanting to explore everything to do with the world of podcasts and specifically creating one, I also just felt like part of me wanted this show to, as well as be on all the usual things, also be on YouTube. There's something about YouTube that always brings me back to it, that no matter what I do, I have like a calling to do something there, to create stuff and put stuff there. So I wanted to put this on YouTube, but if I wanted to put it on YouTube, I didn't just want to put the audio version. I wanted a video element. So that's what I decided to do. And that's what we're doing. I'm Weston Hasty. I make a YouTube channel. It's called Magic Man Mo, where I do Let's Plays. I also have a mobile gaming channel called Magic Man Mo Mobile. I also have a vlogging channel. I haven't done anything on it in a very long time, although that's going to change this year, called Weston Hasty. You can check that out. It's my name, so that should be easier to find, as well as, what else do I have? More things to come. I've got lots of projects to work on. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, or whatever you might happen to celebrate. The year went by so slowly. This is my version of a transition into my first topic, which is 2020 in general, as well as the Christmas season and that kind of thing. 2020 has been quite the year, to say in the nicest way possible. It has been turbulent, it has been trying, and it has been tumultuous. Those are my 3 T's for the year. It's and I still think that's perhaps being too kind. It has been a slow year. It's taken a long time to get through. It's been the longest month of my life this year. Or I should say last year. Thankfully, finally, we're out of this out of 2020, the year of 2020, the year of the Rona, and the pretty much complete collapse of, honestly, I don't exaggerate here. Basically, the complete collapse of society as we understood it at the time. It's not the complete collapse of all society. We didn't have a complete breakdown where we had global anarchy or anything like that, but society as we knew it was rocked to its core as a result of the pandemic of 2020. And it has made everything that you would normally do in your day-to-day life so much more difficult as a result. 2020 has just been a trying time for us all, and I'm glad to be out of that year. The really sad thing is, back in January 2020, I was really, really looking forward to that year in terms of growth in all my projects, starting new things, delving into, trying new things kind of comes in 2 parts for me. Trying new things online and in my hobbies and in my projects and things that I wanted to try there, as well as try new things in real life. Like to get out there and put myself out of my comfort zone and try different things, including that vlogging channel I mentioned. I wanted to get out and about and try to do some more things in public a little bit and bring that channel back. And that just never happened in 2020. It never felt appropriate. It never felt like the right time, and it felt particularly difficult to accomplish at the time, and that channel kind of fell by the wayside. There was a lot of things I did not get to do last year, in particular because I did not earn the tremendous amount of free time that a lot of my YouTubing compatriots, colleagues, I don't know, peers, YouTubing peers, found, the free time that they found. Many people, as a result of 2020, were either laid off of or temporarily not working, basically, for better or for worse. And a lot of people turned to streaming, Twitch and YouTube and that kind of thing to fill the void, because all of a sudden they had this tremendous amount of free time, for better or for worse. For some people, that was a much worse aspect than it was for others. People that could turn to streaming and find success there were the lucky ones. I didn't even have the chance to attempt to take advantage of 2020's coronavirus thing because I work in the food industry. And this is why I bring this all up. This is like a new reintroduction to me a little bit. But I work in the food industry. So as such, I'm considered an essential worker. And as someone who works at a restaurant that never got fully shut down, that we've been able to do something the entire year, I have continued to work full time at my regular job. So I have not had tremendous amounts of just new free time appear out of nowhere. The only thing that really changed is that when I wasn't working, what I could do outside of work was now significantly more limited than it was in years before. So in that sense, I got kind of the double hammer a little bit. I was very fortunate to still be able to work and earn an income and that kind of thing. That was never an issue for me in my lifestyle. I don't live very extravagantly. My costs are very low, thankfully. So in that sense, I was very fortunate. But as a hobbyist who really enjoys expanding the number of projects he takes on and trying to develop and expand those, it was very unfortunate I didn't have time to go as all in on those different projects as I would have liked to. So as a result, 2020 was not quite the year that I was hoping it would be. And I don't think it was for anyone. So that does not make me special. Don't misunderstand this as some sort of me complaining about my own personal woes. This is just the way it has been for like so many people, right? I'm sure some of you maybe can relate to this, or if you can't relate to me exactly, you can certainly relate to the fact that 2020 probably was not the year that you wanted it to be. And it has changed the way that I make plans. It has changed the way that I make expectations for the year to come. And of course, this is all going to feed into my goals and plans for 2021, because it's so hard to get too optimistic about that kind of thing or to make too many big plans. Basically, I'm being very cautious moving forward. I want to be optimistic. I want to look forward to the new year. But honestly, I looked forward to 2020. 2020 in January, I was listening to, I remember this is something that I felt very thematically tied to. I was listening to Electric Swing in January 2020. I was looking forward to something about January 2020 is just Electric Swing to me. In fact, I'm listening to some Electric Swing right now. There was just something about 2020. We were ushering in a new decade, and 1920 in America was the Roaring 20s, a decade of crazy change in America, and I was looking forward to hopefully ushering in the 2020s, this decade, as ushering in big change, big projects, that kind of thing. Little did I know in January that quote-unquote big change would be the Rona season. That was 1 month of quarantine that turned into a goddamn year of quarantine. So while I was hoping it would be a year of change, the change we got was not what I was hoping it would be. I was very optimistic and very looking forward to the year, and that got rattled to its core. All the same, we survived it. I hope you all enjoyed your Christmas season or whatever holiday you might celebrate, your holiday season, whatever it might be. I certainly did. It was a quiet one, although my holiday seasons have gotten quieter over the years. Anyway, I spent my Christmas at my parents' house, eating with the folks and my brother, just the four of us, eating food, playing games, chatting, and just generally enjoying my immediate family. We didn't have a big family gathering, although that hasn't really been in the cards for my family for years now, as my family exists all over the country now. We don't have a lot of close family members, and those that are close to us, we don't get into touch with very much anymore, just unfortunately, as is the way things are. People have their own lives going on, and people are closer or further apart than whatever. Whatever. It's always complicated, right? So for the most part, it was just us four. So we had a quiet Christmas this year. We did not separate. Like, my parents are clean of the Rona. My brother and I are clean of the Rona. We were not concerned about getting together. I know there was a big hoopla about making sure people stayed home for the holidays and that kind of thing and don't go out. At least there was in my area, lots of advertisements and that kind of thing about really being against going out and traveling for the holidays. We were not so concerned about that in my small immediate family because we've been meeting together every now and again anyway. So we did get together. We were fortunate in that sense. And it was a small to-do. And I got some things for Christmas. You know, my parents got me some clothes, as they like to do. I got a couple of new shirts, pair of pajama pants. This is what happens when you get to be my age. Take a guess at how old I am. It's somewhere. Tweet at me. Just take a guess. Oh, we have a hashtag Hasty Podcast. If you want to send me questions or comments about the podcast, you can tweet at me. I'm at Weston Hasty. You can use the hashtag Hasty Podcast to send me comments and stuff like that. But to be my age, you just get excited for clothes and bits and bobs and maybe some cleaning supplies and that kind of thing. I will say, I did put together some money for the holidays, and I've indulged myself here recently between the holidays and the new year. I've indulged myself, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see them. I've indulged myself in some new headphones. Oh, yes. These are nice. I've got, what are they called? They're, this is not sponsored. Is it called anything? Corsair. I've got some Corsair headphones. It's the HS60 Pro Surround version, which they're not like insane. They weren't like insane. They're not like Beats by Dre or whatever, any of the really high tier headphones. But compared to the old Turtle Beach headset that I bought on a Black Friday sale back in, wow, what would it have been? 2011? 12? 13? Somewhere around there. Call it 2012-ish. Something like 8-ish years ago. That pair has been beat up and has seen better days, and one of the sides doesn't work at all anymore. Like one of the ears doesn't work at all anymore, and the other ear is staticky. So that pair had to go. And I've got a new pair, and I'm listening to them now. I like to listen to some kind of music while I do my podcast, just myself, because that way it's not as quiet when I'm talking to myself in this room that is not sound barrier proofed. I have very little on the walls and apparently not enough furniture enclosed to like suction cup all my talking. So there's a bit of an echo in here, and the sound is just quiet, and I don't like it. So I have to have something in my ear hole. So I play some soft music while I'm doing the podcast, in case you didn't know. In case you wondered why sometimes my volume control when I'm talking is not up to snuff. In case you're wondering why, sometimes I'm really loud, sometimes I'm really quiet. It's because I have no idea what I sound like, because I have headphones in and I'm listening to music for better or for worse. So I did invest in some new headphones for myself, and that's really fun. I did invest in a pair of new earbuds for when I'm doing my streaming and stuff on YouTube. They're kind of a backup pair. I wanted to have two pairs because the pair I have now is still fantastic, but I always like to have a backup in case something goes wrong, as well as a pair of earbuds for just in case I'm out and about and I need earbuds for something and I don't want to share like the same pair of earbuds that I use when I'm streaming. I use earbuds when I stream on YouTube in my gaming channel because I wear a hat while I stream. It's just a part of my like outfit, my costume, my sort of attire, my theme that I do on that channel. And that hat is not conducive of wearing headphones. So I wear earbuds when I stream. So I wanted another pair of that, and I did that, and that was all very exciting. As well as invested in a new coffee mug. As I'm reaching over for it, YouTube viewers can see my new coffee mug. This is this was not an expensive purchase, but I wanted to show it off because so much here on the channel, on the podcast, we sip coffee and enjoy the morning and that kind of thing. I've got a new mug that I'm very excited about because I don't have very many mugs. I don't own very many mugs. I'm gonna have to wash this, but I don't own very many mugs. Believe it or not, I reuse kind of the same mugs over and over again. Sometimes day to day, they do not go washed. You just rinse it out and keep pouring coffee into it and hope that I don't catch some sort of bacterial disease from my cup, which I've never done. But then again, I also have an iron stomach. I don't know if that's disgusting or not. Sure, I can't be the only one who sometimes drinks from their coffee mug, goes to bed or whatever, and the next day you've got your unwashed coffee mug that, I mean, it's not dirty, it's just got coffee stains in the bottom. You just rinse that out and pour again. I'm not the only one, right? That's not disgusting, right? That's totally fine. That's totally normal. But I did invest in another mug. so that I have some more options available to me. And I haven't invested much more. I was very tempted. I wanted to buy with some of my Christmas gifts and savings and that kind of thing. I wanted to buy like a new smartwatch. I've never owned a smartwatch at all. I say new. I mean just a smartwatch, and I was very tempted. I saw one or two on sale that I was interested in. Specifically, there was this one. It was like a Gen 4 Fossil. Fossil's the name of the brand. I don't know much about them, but it was on sale, so that's why I was looking at it. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to have a smartwatch. I always, growing up as a child, was really into watches. I loved watches. I would wear so many watches. I had different kinds. Sometimes I'd wear 2 at a time. I just loved having a timepiece on my wrist. And even today, even now, I feel like I would enjoy watches, but like I say, I work in the food industry, and you're not really supposed to wear a watch or really any kind of bracelet or whatever when you're working around food, especially if you're working around anything that could be using cutting implements, that kind of thing. It's dangerous, potentially, depending on what you're using, potentially dangerous to yourself, as well as not necessarily sanitary, because you're probably not typically washing your bracelets and watches and that kind of thing the way that you're supposed to in the food industry, which is not just soap and water, but also sanitized with chemicals and that kind of thing. The type of stuff that's not usually okay to put on your watch. So I'm not really supposed to wear that kind of stuff, and I don't. I say not supposed to, but I don't. I do not wear that stuff because you can't do that. So my buying a smartwatch doesn't make a lot of sense for me because most of the time I would not be wearing it when I'm out and about. So the only time I would get to really wear it is if I'm out in public shopping or something like that, or at home. And at home it feels kind of silly. So as much as I really want a smartwatch, I really do, but my current line of work is not conducive of regularly wearing a smartwatch. I'm really into wearable technology. I remember being very psyched about the Google Glass wearable technology that came out a while ago in its sort of demo phase when Google sent those headsets out for people to experiment with. I don't know where that project has gone, if it's completely canned or if it's disappeared or what the story is with that, or if anyone else is working on similar technology. I was really into that concept because I love the idea of wearing what's essentially a Dragon Ball Z scouter on my eyeball and being able to get real-time information in front of my face at all times. I love that idea. I love everything about it. I don't know how I would use it or how that would be remotely useful to me. It probably would not be. But I love the idea of it. I want a pair of sci-fi futuristic glasses because I'm a bespectacled person, so I know that's a little complicated, but I want a pair of future sci-fi glasses that gives me essentially a heads-up display. That's what I want. I want that so bad. I remember when people were complaining about the Google Glass that, oh, it looks stupid, it looks silly. It's like, come on now. If that's the only complaint you have about the way it looks, it'll look fine once people are used to it. And 2, when it's not the demo product, right? Like when it's actually been sleeked down into a commercial version, it'll look pretty cool, I think. Or some people will still think it's weird, but I think it looks cool. I don't care what it looks like. The important thing to me is what can it do and what functionality does it bring to me. That's what I'm more interested in, and I'm all about it. I don't know what ever happened to Google Glass or any other potential competitors that I'm unaware of. I don't know what ever happened to any of that, but I am familiar with wearable technology in general, and I am about it. I would love to have a smartwatch, some sort of smart glasses, some kind of smart anything. I want to be wearing smart clothes one day. I am all about adopting that technology in the future, and I hope that I have the chance to take full advantage of that at some point in the future. Even like something like VR technology that I have not been able to take advantage of myself personally. I've not yet bought a VR headset, although if I did some rearranging, I think I could have a space for it. I've never purchased into VR because I've never been able to convince myself of pulling the trigger yet on the price point. I've wanted the technology to get better before I invest in it. I didn't want to invest so early that the technology is not really that great, but it is expensive. I wanted to wait until the technology got better, more available, a little bit cheaper, and we're getting to that point now. I was just looking at like some Oculus tech right now. I know there's other ones out there like the Vive and stuff, but I was looking at Oculus here recently, and with their like Oculus Quest 2, whatever the one is where it's the whole entire headset is self-supported, right? You don't have to be plugged into your PC or corded in anywhere. It's completely cordless is the idea. Is super fascinating to me, and I would love to give that a whirl. And it's the price on that has come way down from where VR sets used to be a few years ago, and I'm tempted to get something like that, but I'm also tempted to just get the wired version because I've invested in recent years heavily into my PC setup, and it can handle VR if I want it to. So I'm wondering if I should invest in the Quest 2 that is completely self-supported, or do I just get the PC version because it would probably run better than anything the self-supported version can do. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at some comparisons, but I'm very excited that the price point on that stuff has come down as much as it has, and the technology has advanced as far as it has, because I want to invest in a VR set so badly. I just want to be locked down on Beat Saber 24/7. I don't know what to tell you. I'm very heavily interested in wearable technology. Even though I wouldn't consider VR gaming and a VR headset to be wearable technology, it's more like a wearable console. But it's kind of like wearable technology. You just wouldn't wear it out in public, probably. Although admittedly, with things like the Quest 2, where you can completely wear it by itself without a computer around you, the question does start to become, can you one day take VR technology with you onto airplanes and buses in public and not be weird about it? It's kind of like the Switch, right? The Nintendo Switch. In case you're wondering if this sounds completely absurd and stupid, it's really not. Consider the Switch, right? It's a console that you take with you out in public. An entire console, not just a handheld rinky-dink Game Boy, DS, whatever, or PS Vita, but an entire home console that you can take with you out into public on the bus, the airplane, the etc., right? It's travelable gaming technology. Is VR headsets going to become like that one day? Especially when you consider perhaps a console that merges the concept of VR and maybe even AR. Or maybe one day we'll see the future of AR consoles entirely. I was talking about heads-up displays with things like the Google Glass, where you can kind of see things around you in real time. Can you imagine a gaming headset that kind of incorporates that level of technology, but into a headset form? Think like games like Pokemon Go are probably the most basic form and version of that technology that we can probably conceive of right now with our current technology. Games that you can use on your phone that incorporate the real world around you in game form. Imagine if you could put that into a headset and you turn that into a console, and there's any number of games you can do with that. Now, of course, ignoring any safety concerns you might have about that technology, because considering safety concerns is boring and pessimistic, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to worry about the safety concerns of that kind of stuff at the moment. But just think about the technology aspect of it, what might be possible down the line in terms of wearable technology and wearable gaming, as those technologies kind of converge and merge into one. I'm stoked. I'm all about it. I'm going a little off script here. I don't have a script. I'm going a little off topic here and talking about future technology, but this is the kind of thing that I get excited about. And that has been a long-winded tangent about why I almost considered buying a smartwatch, but then didn't, because I realized that it's just not practical for me and my lifestyle yet, although I'd really love to. I'd really love to be at that point. But Christmas was a quiet affair. We had the tree up and that kind of thing. And I could talk about, like, you know, the way Christmases used to run back in the day, you know, with family around. We never had big Christmas. Well, no, I take that back. I was going to say we never had a huge Christmas, like affairs or whatever with big family gatherings or anything like that. But no, there was a time way early on in my childhood where it would be... I'm trying to remember now if it was Christmas Day or if we always waited until the day after Christmas. But now I'm starting to think that it was still Christmas Day. Time is a strange thing when you try to think back to your childhood. Time is strange how it warps around, and your concept of what even a day is gets all confused. But yeah, you know, in the mornings you'd wake up and you go down, open presents with your parents or whatever, and oh my God, would Santa get me this year? Oh, this new monster truck, or eventually, oh, this new video game or whatever. And then we would later in the afternoon. I don't remember I'm trying to remember. I guess maybe it was different from year to year. Sometimes it was a lunch, sometimes it was a dinner. We would go to my grandma's house, where we would meet with some of my cousins and uncles and aunts, and there would be some more family there, and we would have another sort of round of Christmas presents and festivities and that kind of thing. That was very early in my childhood. Eventually, that started to wane a little bit as fewer and fewer people were able to get out necessarily every year. As again, like I said, I have family all over the country, and they can't always just fly into the country every year. And the reason people always came here to my home state to see my grandma is because that was my grandma. Her daughters or sons would want to fly in and see her. My grandma was sort of the anchor, right? The anchor point for my family to come and see, because she couldn't necessarily travel around a lot. So people had to travel to see her, right? So that's why I was very fortunate growing up living close to my grandma, that all my family had to come here to see us instead of me having to travel out to see other people. Eventually, over the years, that slowed down quite a bit. And now my grandma actually doesn't even live around here anymore. She's moved. We've moved her safely into better weather with her son that lives in Texas. And now she lives way, way, way very far south of me. And I need to make some plans to go out and see her eventually. I have not been able to do it here in a while. I've definitely not bothered even trying to travel out of state during COVID. I just do not want to even think about making travel arrangements. I know some people have and haven't had a lot of problems, but it depends on what states you're coming from or you're going to, and the rules are different and things change every now and again that I have not even tried to this year. But that is something that I need to go out and do. But suffice it to say, because she's been moved and because I have family everywhere, my family affairs have gotten much, much quieter over the years. And yeah, that's kind of it. Christmas I love the season of Christmas. I love the decorations. I love the music. I torment my coworkers at work with Christmas music all month long, and they hate it, but I love it. And then once Christmas is over, I do stop playing the music, but I love everything about the season. I wouldn't say I'm like obsessive about like decorating or anything like that. I don't do a lot of it myself, but I do certainly enjoy it from everyone else. I love everyone else's decorations, and I love seeing snow on the ground and the music and that kind of thing. There's something about this season that's just very special. Everyone seems happier than usual than they would be throughout the year. I think, anyway, a lot happier. It's just a really fun season, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, even though my Christmas season was pretty low-key. It was pretty low-key for myself in particular. And then we move on into the new year, and of course, now it is 2021, everybody. What do we have to expect from 2021? Oh my goodness, so many things. It's been a wild year. I've been playing just a lot of Cyberpunk. Maybe I should talk about Cyberpunk first. The new year has ushered in Cyberpunk, and Cyberpunk technically came out in December. When did Cyberpunk actually come out? I don't remember. The last couple of weeks have been wild for me. I'm sorry. Cyberpunk's come out. Flash is officially dead. I'll talk about Flash first because it's a shorter story. Flash by Adobe Flash, the animation and gaming software that people used for years to make basically everything on the internet, period, for a good chunk of the early 2000s. I'm sure you're familiar with it if you've spent any time on the internet in the early 2000s. The Flash games on the internet, as well as being responsible for the very reason why YouTube could take off and actually offer its video services in the early 2000s when it launched. They used Flash to make downloadable videos or low bandwidth streaming video content when it launched, and YouTube's meant so much to me that even YouTube's history is wrapped up in Flash back in the day because of the way the internet used to have to run. For security concerns, however, and because the technology is so old and beat up and decrepit, Adobe is no longer supporting Flash, and this is the last year for it. It's been officially ended, basically. Its support for Flash has officially ended as of December 31st, 2020. So now that we're in the new year, Flash is no longer supported by Adobe. And many browsers are now shedding their support for carrying it altogether, and eventually it will disappear from the internet altogether. It is now officially dead. It's a very sad time for me because a lot of my YouTube channel has been centered around playing a number of games that are Flash-based. They're old games, ancient games, not new games, but I've done a lot of that on my gaming channel. And now that that's going away, my gaming channel will have to be shifting focus onto different things as a result. And with that, a drink to Flash game. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call I'm looking at. I don't think it's anybody. It's not one important. It's potential spam. It's potential spam. For anyone that's watching the YouTube version, yes, I am recording this podcast on my phone because it is actually the best camera I own, which is something I want to invest in the future, is an actual legitimate camera. Like a camera, not just my phone, not just my webcam, a camera one day in the future. So that's why I was like staring awkwardly into the camera, because it's my phone. If you were watching on YouTube, I was getting a phone call. Anyway, that's completely derailed me. Flash is now dead. So if you're still interested in returning and playing any old Flash video games or watching any old Flash animations from your past, while you still have the chance to do so, you might still be able to get them from some of your old websites. Or something that I'm going to turn to is this technology called Flashpoint. I don't remember the name of the company now. I need to look it up. But they developed this software called Flashpoint, and they have archived something like 70,000 Flash-based games from around the web, as well as tens of thousands of animations into this massive archive. And you can download the entire archive to your own computer if you really want, or they do offer a service where you download their sort of launcher. It's basically a launcher, and you can download and install specific games and animations at will, whichever ones that you want specifically. And it basically emulates Flash for you on your computer to run on your computer, as opposed to on the web where it is no longer supported. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Rest in peace, Flash. You will be missed, I think. And I look forward to you playing some games still on Flashpoint for the near future. As for Cyberpunk, I've been playing a ton of Cyberpunk, everybody. Woo! What a buggy mess, right? No. Actually, I've been really enjoying Cyberpunk. I got it for PC. I've seen it played on PlayStation 4. As my brother has got it on PlayStation 4, has been playing it, quite a bit of it there. And for the most part, it runs okay, but it crashes a lot, and sometimes there are visual bugs. But luckily, the game also autosaves a lot, so even when you crash, you usually don't miss a lot of progress in your game. At the worst, it's really just a minor annoyance, and at best, it's not much to talk about at all. So for as wildly berated as the game has been, it's really not been that bad unless you're running some of the oldest PlayStation 4 consoles that came out early in its lifespan, or if you're running on low-end to maybe mid-end PCs. I don't know how mid-end PCs are running the game because, like I was saying, over the years, I've invested into a pretty beefy rig myself. A beefy rig unlike any that I thought I would ever own back in the day, but I do own now, and it runs it great. It really struggles at the highest settings with ray tracing and all that fancy schmancy stuff, but if I just turn the settings down just a skosh, and I just don't worry about ray tracing because I don't really care, the game runs great. It runs fantastic. Population density is insane. I'm loving the game to death. I will say it was a game that was probably overhyped for what it actually was. I think for what some of us were expecting it to be, was that it was going to be basically a cyberpunk-style life simulator, where I think a lot of the things that people wanted to be able to do in the game is not there and available. Like the trailers where some people were speculating, oh, in this trailer there's a sex shop. Will I be able to freaking use sexy toys on my character or whatever in game? That would be an unusual feature in what is essentially a shooter RPG game. That would be an unusual feature, and to my knowledge, that feature is not there. No, you cannot use sexy toys on your character in game, although there is a number of shops throughout town. So there's a number of things that I think people were hoping to be able to do in the game that kind of fall along the lines of Life Simulator, that the game just doesn't actually do. It's just not a life simulator. It is, at its heart, a shooter RPG. It's something along the veins of a mix between like a Fallout and a Grand Theft Auto game, somewhere between that mix. It doesn't do a lot of Grand Theft Auto stuff that Grand Theft Auto does really well. It doesn't do it as well as Grand Theft Auto. Like some of the racing and cars and that kind of thing. Doesn't do as well as Grand Theft Auto, as well as some aspects of world building. Like it doesn't have its own specific TV shows you can watch like you can in Grand Theft Auto. It doesn't have quite the number of random hobbies you can do like you can do in Grand Theft Auto. So there's a number of life aspects that Grand Theft Auto does better than Cyberpunk, but Cyberpunk's world is well built in general. And in terms of Fallout, if I'm going to compare it to Fallout, because it is a first-person game, it reminds me, because it's a buggy first-person game, it reminds me of a game like Fallout, but it does have much better gunplay than Fallout could ever offer. Fallout, for me, is very subpar gunplay, not very fun, in my opinion. Fallout's gunplay has never been a big draw for me, but Cyberpunk's gunplay is significantly more fun to use. In my opinion, the way I play the game, I have a much better time with gunplay in Cyberpunk than I did like games like Fallout. But that's specifically Fallout. If you want to compare Cyberpunk to other shooter games, maybe a bit of a toss-up. Is as good as like a Call of Duty or Battlefield or something like that? Maybe not, but also it does have RPG elements in the game that shooter games like Call of Duty or Battlefield or something like that, they don't have. So it's this merging of RPG elements with really good gunplay that I enjoy quite a bit. The story, however, is probably the best draw for me. The world building and the story and the characters have been by far my mainstay for sticking around in the game and playing it. I want to see how my character develops based on my choices, as well as the interactions that I have with other characters in the game, how their lives proceed as a result of my decisions, and learning who they are. Characters like Johnny Silverhand himself, that everyone knows as Keanu Reeves in the game, as well as like, I'm trying to remember all the names now. Judy is one of them that you meet very early on, as well as, I want to say her name's who's the racing chick? I want to say Kaylin, and that is not her name. But anyway, because I'm forgetting their names already, all the different characters that you meet, I've been very interested and invested in that game. And actually, despite all of the nonsense that people have been talking about Cyberpunk, about how it's a buggy mess and a terrible game and what a letdown, it's actually a really decent game that just also happens to be particularly unstable. It's just a game that's unstable. On PC, if you lower your settings, usually the worst that you have to deal with are some visual bugs and visual glitches. Like, I watched somebody smoking their gun. They pulled out what was clearly supposed to be a cigarette, but it was their gun, and that was hilarious. I watched someone smoke their gun, and that was pretty fun to watch. I was very confused at first, because I didn't understand what was happening. They just had a gun in their mouth, which was very alarming at first, but I realized what happened as cigarette smoke started pooling out of the handle of the gun. I'm like, that's not right. I don't even know how a bug like that happens. I don't know how a cigarette model and a gun model get switched. I don't know how that's possible, but I'm also not a high-end AAA game developer. So other than visual glitches, the game actually runs pretty smoothly most of the time and is a terrific experience if you're playing on high-end PC. If you're playing on one of the later versions of a console, it runs mostly all right. You're going to have to deal with the nuisance of crashing happening every now and again, which is a bummer. But if you're running on low-end PC, it's probably a nightmare, or on early-end consoles, it's probably a nightmare, and that's incredibly unfortunate, which is why it's been so divisive. I've really enjoyed the game. I've had a fantastic experience in general. It's unfortunate that some people have not. So Cyberpunk has been a very divisive game, and a game that I would love to talk more at length about, but already we're getting late into the podcast. So maybe we'll come back to Cyberpunk and talk more about it, because I certainly haven't beat the game yet, and I would love to talk more about the game and give you a greater in-depth rundown of my experiences with the game. But what I do want to say is that I do have it, and I'm enjoying it, and oddly enough, I do recommend it, especially if you're playing it on a high-end PC or a later version or edition of a modern console, whether it's the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, or eventually when it comes out on the PS5 and the Xbox Series S or X or whatever that one's called. I'm not a big Xbox person, so I can't speak to Xbox. I can only speak to PlayStation and PC typically. Which I don't think Cyberpunk is on the new consoles yet, right? Am I making that up? I play most of my games on PC these days, so sometimes I'm not up to date on console news. I don't think Cyberpunk's available on the new consoles yet. The good news is, if you're playing on the old consoles, Cyberpunk has said in the past, assuming that holds up, you can free upgrade to the modern current gens, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. You can upgrade for free if you have a valid copy of Cyberpunk on a previous generation console. So if you do have a previous generation console version of the game, or you get one and you find that the experience is somewhat subpar, what you can do is take comfort in the fact that you can upgrade to the next console version when you do choose to invest in the next console. Because if you're someone who's into console gaming, chances are you'll probably pick up the next gen eventually. Whether you do it sooner or later is entirely up to you and your lifestyle and your expenses, of course. But typically, in my experience, you'll probably do it eventually. If you're into console gaming, you'll do it eventually. Like, I don't have the PS5 yet. I don't even console game much ever anymore. I still really want to get one. Maybe it's just because I'm like a closeted PlayStation, Sony fanboy or something like that. But I do intend on getting the PlayStation 5 eventually. I just do. I'll wait. I won't get it right away because I'm not in a hurry, but I just do. But I'm enjoying Cyberpunk on my beefy PC rig quite a bit, besides the visual glitches, the most annoying of which where I can see shrubbery and trees from miles away, but they're in my face for some reason. Like, please go away. That's probably the most annoying glitch I see that happens on occasion, especially out in the wasteland. But, I mean, you get over it. The gunplay is good, and the story is great, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So, actually, I do recommend Cyberpunk. I hope that they continue to fix their glitches and bugs as they progress, which would only mean that the game's only going to get better and more stable, which means my recommendation only grows as time goes on. So, I like it quite a bit. And with that, we're nearing close to the end of the podcast. What do we have in store for 2021? Like I say, this podcast, what I look forward to doing is seeing it expand and grow as I continue to do these longer versions of the show. Let me know what you think of the longer versions. Is it too long? Is it not long enough? Is a weekly show not often enough? Is it too often? Should I go to once a month? Do you hate the sound of my voice? Tell me how much you hate me. No, don't do that. I'll probably block you or something. But let me know what you think of the new version of the show at its longer length and more rambly, yet like I feel like it's very rambly, but I feel like I can cover a lot more in this period of time. Talk in more depth about some stuff, cover more things that interest me. Tell me what you think about this length and that kind of thing. Somewhere. Tweet at me is one of the best places, or if you're listening to this or watching this someplace where you can leave comments, do so there as well, and I will see them. Like if you're watching this on YouTube, for example, leave me a comment, or if you're watching this on Anchor, where I don't think comments exist, you can tweet at me at Weston Hasty or using the hashtag HastyPodcast. Do those things. Let me know what you think of this format. I look forward to continuing to experiment with the podcast and introduce guests as the year goes on, and for YouTube, introducing some more visual elements, but for the audio version, just being able to go in more depth and offer up little snippets of variety and different things that happen throughout the show. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of the future of this podcast. So, this is kind of like a soft reset. It's kind of like season 2 of a Hasty podcast, because I feel like a pretty significant change from what we were doing before. So it's kind of like a season 2, but I'm not going to mark it as such. If you're on a system that labels things by seasons, I'm not going to label it as such, because it's not like what we did up until this point was like so uber popular that like thousands of people are going to be confused. It's just going to be some of you out there that watch and listen, and you're the real ones. Those of you that have been listening since the beginning or close to the beginning and have been sticking around listening to a few of my podcasts, I appreciate you. Welcome back to the show if you're listening to this one. I'm not going to call it season 2 or whatever. This is just the first podcast. We're an experiment to begin with. This is an experiment. It's all an experiment. It's all a part of a Hasty podcast. I don't really do seasons. If I did seasons, it would insinuate that there's some sort of numbering structure to them. If I did a season 2, that would insinuate there would be one day a season 3, and I don't know what that would look like. So we'll just keep numbering the episodes just one after the other. I think that will be just fine. But that's the future of the podcast. Is it's longer show, even though it's a little less often, and we'll introduce some guests as we go. That's the plan, anyway. I hope you guys enjoy it. I have so many things planned for my other projects as well, my gaming stuff. I'm introducing more varied streams in the future, as well as lots of episodes that are taken from streams. Clips are coming. More channels are coming. I'm going to be relaunching myself into my poetry, which I haven't done a lot with, my poetry writing on my poetry blog at hastymadeDecision.com. And so more YouTube projects, more poetry, that kind of thing. I really, really, really want to write. I'm going to say write in big asterisks, right? And in big inverted commas, write a poetry book, which is probably going to be a compilation of the stuff that I've already written for my poetry blog. It's going to be like a hastily made decision volume 1 or something like that. I want to compile that into a book and put that out there just to again, because I love creating stuff, just to sort of dabble and put my toes into what the publishing world looks like. Because I do a little bit of writing, but I haven't written a really big project that would be ready to publish yet, although I would like to do that as well. I figure I'm going to make some sort of compilation or volume of poetry and publish that to see what the publishing world looks like, and then if I really enjoy it, continue throwing myself full force into the writing world as well. And I'm going to really get into writing and publishing, as well as this podcasting thing. The thing is, I want to make resolutions. This is the section where we talk about resolutions. I don't normally make resolutions, and what I'm going to do throughout the month, I always spend January coming up with my goals. Instead of like having my goals ready by January 1st, I actually spend January coming up with my goals, my milestones, my resolutions. I spend that month figuring that out, and then the next 11 months actually following through with it. And I don't normally make resolutions. I don't like resolutions. They seem so stiff and so hard to follow. What I really like was this advice that I got from a YouTube channel, CGP. I almost said Project Red. CGP Grey, I want to say is the name. It's a very popular YouTube channel. You may have heard about it, CGP Grey, and he talked about resolutions in a video a couple of years ago, I think. And his advice, and I really like it. His advice is to, instead of coming up with hard set resolutions, come up with a theme for the year. Come up with a theme. This will be the year of fitness or something, the year of creation, the year of travel, and that kind of thing. Create a theme around your year, and then focus your milestones and goals around that. And understand that if you miss a milestone or a goal or something like that, it's not because you failed. It's all been a part of the process and journey towards working towards that theme. So basically, anything you do is a success. That way you don't have to be like, oh, my resolution this year is to lose 20 pounds. And then you get to the end of the year and you lose 5 pounds. You're like, wow, I'm a big failure. No, if your year was themed around fitness, perhaps, like, oh yeah, I lost some weight. Oh yeah, I ran more miles. Or yeah, I did this, that, or whatever. You can list your accomplishments that you achieved towards the end of your theme, and that's more rewarding than listing all of the resolutions you failed to accomplish, because at the beginning of the year, you were unable to foresee what the end of the year would look like. If 2020 has taught me anything, it's that you can't predict what the year is going to have in store for you. So I'm not going to really make a number of resolutions, but I would like to do is create a theme for this coming 2021. And I want it to be the year of reinvigorated project completion. That is terrible wording, but like I say, I spend the entirety of January coming up with my theme. So I don't know the exact theme yet, but basically it's me trying to throw myself full force into my extracurricular projects and try to get one to stick, because what I want to do, ultimately, my ultimate goal in so doing, is to become a full-time creative. This is the year of creation and creativity. I want to become a full-time creative. I want to break away from doing my full-time day job and go into this nonsense that I moonlight into. This is this type of stuff that I want to be able to do full-time. If I could devote the 50 to 60 hours that I spend not doing the stuff to doing this stuff, I feel like I could get a lot more done. And I think we could make some crazy, awesome, amazing things. And I think together with your help, we can do that. And that's going to be my goal. My theme for this year is creation. That's what I want it to be officially. It's vague, and I'll probably follow up as we get into this month, some more hard set, like actual milestones and stuff that I hope to reach. They're going to be like my hopes and desires. We'll get more into that in some of the future podcasts. But for today's podcast, I'm afraid I am out of time. Our time just absolutely flew by. I had no idea I'd be able to talk for this long about basically just so few things. In fact, I didn't talk about Cyberpunk nearly as much as I thought I would have time to do, but I had to rush through that a little bit. We'll come back around to that. As for other things that I was talking about before, like my Netflix shows and stuff like that, all those topics will be returning. I have not forgotten entirely about them. I just did not have time for that many topics in one podcast, but I'll tune in with you guys once again next week. Check out the description for all my links to my things, or go to westonhasty.com, which is my website that has a link to all my stuff no matter what I do. You can check out my stuff there as well. If you would like to support the show financially, I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/westonhasty, or you can subscribe through Anchor's subscription service at anchor.com/hasty podcast if you would like to support the show financially. If you don't want to do that, or you are already doing that, then no worries. Just spread the word about what I do, about the things that I do. If you love it, if you love what I do, spread the word and let people know that I exist and about the podcast and anything else, and I would appreciate it ever so very much. In the meantime, that's going to do it for this cast, for this pod. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do all the things, and until next time, wash your hands. I'm out of here. Goodbye.